Hi, good morning and welcome to this EMPA webinar. I'm Lorraine Churchill. I'm a member of the EMPA board and I'm coming to you from Portland, Oregon on the west coast of the US. Thanks for letting me join you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay respects to elders past and present. Today, we'll have the presentation followed by a Q&A session. So as we go, verbal questions won't be invited. Instead, you may type questions in the Q&A panel. I will ask our presenter your questions after her presentation. Also, you can click on the chat icon to open a panel where you can go and type questions and comments to other attendees or our presenter, Kathy Baklan. Further, at any time, you can also email through your questions to conferences@empa.org.au and our secretariat will help you out. So as we move forward, I'd like to introduce Kathy Baklan from South Australian Country Fire Service. Kathy is the marketing professional who specializes in campaign management and has worked for a number of industries, including finance, construction, charities, and the South Australian government. She now works for the South Australian Country Fire Service, developing and implementing multimedia campaigns, internal and external communications, and as media liaison. She is passionate about helping and working for the South Australian community, and her role in the CFS helps her achieve this by educating the community in high-risk bushfire zones on preparedness and resilience. Kathy believes in developing good relationships with creative and media agencies to ensure the very best outcome in meeting organizational objectives. Another passion of Kathy's is her love of animals. She has 3 border collies and was previously a registered breeder of border collies. Her motto for life is simple: always, always be honest, ethical, and treat others how you would want to be treated. Over to you, Kathy. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine, and thank you to everyone for introducing myself and letting me talk about the campaign. I'm not quite sure if I'm on the screen. Yes? Okay, I will go ahead and I'll start the presentation. Just bear with me. Okay, so I'll be talking about the SACFS 2019 campaign. First of all, I'll be going through the background and then the planning process, the key objectives, creative strategy, and then the media strategy. Oops, sorry, this keeps playing up. Okay, so, sorry, just go back to that other page. Okay, so also I'll go through the key messages for the campaign and then the campaign results. And as Lorraine mentioned before, I will be going through any questions that you may have. Okay, so first off, the campaign strategy has been going over a number of years. Because we're looking for behavioural change, it's important that each year we build on each of those campaigns and learn the lessons from each campaign. So for the 2017-18 campaign, the campaign DNA was simply choose to survive, with the single-minded proposition being you have a choice in whether you survive a bushfire. So it was putting a lot of the onus onto the community living in the bushfire risk zones. The 2018 and 19 campaign was more about tactical actions, because we found that the community wanted us to tell them what they need to do to help survive a bushfire. So that one was act as survive, with the single-minded proposition being taking simple actions that will help you survive a bushfire. So the campaign that happened last year was more about being more emotive, because a lot of people hadn't experienced a bushfire in their life. So and research shows that people don't act unless they've actually been involved and they feel that it actually is going to happen to them. So the campaign DNA for this year's campaign was own your own actions. And then when bushfire hits, what are you prepared to lose? So just going through to the approval process, working for South Australian Government or any government, we are using taxpayers' money. So there's a rigorous process that we have to go through, which is completely understandable because we are using, taxpayers' money. Prior planning is, about the procurement of the media agency, the creative agency, and the research agency. So that obviously takes time as well. And it goes through all the ticks and cross checks to make sure that we're abiding by government approval processes. Then for any campaigns over 200,000, there's a more rigorous process for that. So as you can see on the screen, there's about developing the communications plan. I've just received the approval back to start this year's campaign. Then we have to register the communications on the communications approval portal. Then there's a government communications advisory commission who we then take the campaign to, and we talk it through, and obviously they have all the costings and all the strategy and that. So it can, be it adds about 5 weeks to campaign planning. So the key objectives for this campaign was to increase the number of households in the high bushfire prone areas that have a self-assessed level of preparedness for bushfire by 10% on the previous year, which I'll run through what the stats were later on. The second objective was to increase 5-minute bushfire plan engagements from 19,000 to 25,000. This 5-minute bushfire plan is on our website, and it's a simple process where families can sit together and they can do it online, they can print it off, or they can save it in their phones. The third objective was to demonstrate recall of campaign key messages as being relevant to the target audience by 10%. Again, I'll go through those metrics later. And the last one was to increase by 10% the number of people in bushfire-prone risk areas who will consider making a 5-minute bushfire plan. So the creative strategy, as we're saying, we've been building on previous campaigns, and obviously we do the research as well. So we do research on focus groups with the concepts prior to going out and producing them. And then we also do a wave of research mid-campaign and then in April after the campaign. And so the research continually demonstrates there's a clear correlation between an individual's willingness to prepare for bushfire and their life circumstances. Personal investment also has a direct correlation to people's sense of responsibility, which then drives their motivation to prepare. Research also shows that for the younger audience, the value of their own life is not a compelling motivator. So with the younger audience, we really had to hone in on them. And because also younger audience doesn't necessarily have, their own children and such, but they have their own families. But we brought in the animals because people care for the animals like their children, and so they should. The strategy also needed to heighten the emotion to remind people that bushfire doesn't discriminate and to reinforce that living, breathing thing that wants to destroy. We can't do anything about that. It was also important to provide the audience with tactical actions to help alleviate the emotions elicited, which you'll see further on in the presentation. So in doing so, the strategy drove 2 points: emotional resonance and personal relevance. The campaign, just to let you know, it ran from the 27th of October 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. Our bushfire season started earlier this year, which everyone would be aware of, especially in Australia, and now California, unfortunately, is having massive bushfires. So the campaign aimed, like I said before, to drive both emotional and personal relevance, to heighten the emotion by reminding that it doesn't discriminate, reinforce that fire is a living, breathing thing and what's to destroy, but also to challenge the at-risk audience to ask the question, what are you prepared to lose? And then to ensure that we continue to provide tactical actions that alleviate the emotions elicited. So, obviously the emotions are high, but then people want to know, well, okay, what can I do to save my family from, this, the possibility of losing a house or our, stock, lives, etc. There were two primary executions, and the main emotive piece was the fire, go away, and the supporting tactical creative pieces featuring why risk it and staying informed. As I mentioned before, market research included focus groups to test the creative concepts and the two waves of quantitative research that track recall of campaign key messages, levels of community preparedness, and how well the campaign tracked against its key objectives. So in regards to, emotional resonance, it's about overcoming complacency stemming from the lack of bushfire activity, because the previous 2-3 years prior to this year's campaign, actually there was not much bushfire. So this year we really needed the communications to cut through and elicit an emotional response, which was moving on from the previous year's campaigns. And also the personal relevance, ensure that the communications engage everyone in the broad target audience. And also it had to respond to specific motivators for each audience group. So with the planning, obviously there's the media strategy, and I've just been going through part of the creative strategy, where the media strategy was obviously, it's basically a mass media campaign with some clear target audience, predominantly in bushfire prone areas. We also targeted travellers who travelled through, would be travelling through bushfire prone areas when they normally wouldn't, or when there's a bushfire that is happening. Like I said, it targeted broad primary audiences, and particularly those in the high risk peri-urban and regional areas. The media mix included channels that would build reach quickly and drive digital traffic to the South Australian CFS website for more information, and the 5-minute bushfire plan downloads. And that, from the objective, that was actually a real tangible that we could actually, report on, whereas awareness campaigns, sometimes it is that little bit difficult to, have tangible results. So relevant media placements were put in high bushfire risk areas, mobile billboards and ad shells as well. So yeah, it included digital, out of home, ad shells, mobile billboards, TV commercials, print and radio to get that reach to our main target audiences. The media strategy also used media channels to provide an opportunity to deliver constant reminders to the target audiences to feel prepared and safe. So in the priming stage, reach was continually built upon by our annual messaging to South Australians using TV to deliver the greatest reach. And as we know, TV is still one of the best mediums to reach the broad audience, and also with your Finecast, streaming and Spotify and things like that. The radio strategy again was aimed to trigger the audiences to get prepared and maintain their preparedness activities leading up to the weekends, which research found is that's when people start doing things around their house, like clearing wood from close to their house, cutting long grass, cleaning their gutters, because embers can travel from miles away and actually go in through the gutters and take hold. The messaging was particularly based across Friday to Sunday, So utilising high engaging, properties, including weekend sponsorships, live reads and credits. So these are part of the creative that we created. So the tick box that's there in the middle, that was actually one of the most recalled aspects of the campaign, and that was all via press as well. You can see the digital, we were on the weather channels, obviously, in the press, then obviously all the other digital, there's your ad shells there in the corner, and then also, like I said, all things digital. So the key messages were, about being prepared, making a plan, and then staying informed. So I'll just take the opportunity to play this one again. Oops. Oops. Oh, okay, I might have to. What I'll do, I'll bring up some, they were working before, but like I was saying to the presenters, I've just come back from leave today, so, and I'm working in a different office, so things don't seem to be working. Anyway, be prepared, that was the young girl, and that, again, the messaging around that was clearing around your property, having an emergency kit ready, and knowing when to leave and where to go. And then the next phase is halfway through the campaign, where it's about making your plan, speak to family, neighbours and friends, have flexibility in your plan, because things don't always go as expected. And then the last part of the campaign is about staying informed and listening to the weather and knowing your total fire bands, subscribing to the CFS warning email, and check radio, website, social media and news updates. And it's just a pity that this isn't working. Just see. No, okay. So the key results of the campaign, as I mentioned before, our first objective was, to increase the self-assessed level of preparedness by 10%. We actually achieved that by 14%, so that was a really, really good result. The objective 2 was we had to increase engagements of 19,000 to 25,000. However, it was 32,179, which was a massive response. Now, in regards to that, obviously, like I was saying before, people, it's not in front of mind when it's not happening. So obviously the horror season that we had last year and early this year added to people being more aware, and it was obviously on the national news. It was, we had New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia and Queensland earlier in the season, all hit by bushfires. So it was very, very front of mind, which was good in one sense, because it made people think about what they need to do. The demonstrate recall of campaign messages has been relevant. Was we missed out by 1%, but that's not too bad if that's the only KPI that we just missed out on. And then the last one was about increasing 10% of the number of people in bushfire prone risk areas who will consider making a 5-minute plan. And again, that was actually achieved. So with the research, awareness levels were recorded at 83%, which is very, very good for a campaign. It was very pleasing to see that it did reach that awareness level. The prompted awareness of the new campaign was higher than that of the previous campaign, but decreased markedly from the levels in December, from 79 to 68. We can partly attribute that to there being no longer any large fires burning in South Australia and nationally by March 2020. And then so that by that stage, the focus was already on the bushfire, and community recovery, and after prolonged media and market saturation, so it was that focus on recovery. So as a result, fires were out of mind for some by April 2020. And then of course we had COVID commence. Well, in January we could hear, there was media reports of the COVID-19, and then by March, April, it was hitting here as well. So then that there was mass market saturation, deservedly so for the COVID. And again, that actually also brings another element that we need to consider for the campaign going forward. The most recalled individual element of the campaign was a to-do list, but it also had a lower recall of 47% than the fire go away thing at 64%. So it really resonated with the audiences. We had feedback from schools, and they were teaching their students, showing the teachers were showing the students the commercial, and we even heard of some kids singing the fire go away rather than the rain go away. So that was part of the strategy as well, to include something that was memorable and that children could remember as well, because they are going to be growing up, and we want it to be like second nature to automatically prepare their homes and have plans in place for if there's another bushfire. The Be Prepared and Prepare Now remained a dominant campaign message, which is really good to see, because that's what we want people to do. But interestingly enough, the at-risk target audience said the new campaign was perceived less relevant than the previous campaign, although the impact was deemed greater. So some of the other key metrics include the digital, which I've just put up on the screen. The table in blue is from our reporting from our website. So in total, 32,179 plans were completed. Our website unique users were up 265%, page visits 253%, and page views 215%. So, it really hit the mark. And again, we also need to take into account that, obviously, that fire activity. So just before I go forward with any questions, I'd just like to say, like, some of the key metrics like TV, radio, Facebook and digital all had the highest recall. And so for planning for this year's campaign, we will be focusing on them again. And unfortunately for this year, we won't be able to use the same creative, because it was so successful that in December, when we had our first fatality from our Cuddly Creek fires, we had the community ringing up, and they were distressed from the radio, the fire go away. So we had to pull that, but then we started using the Be Prepared messaging as well. So also there's a lot of traumatised people in the community at the moment, still recovering from the bushfire. And obviously with COVID-19, that has introduced another layer. So people haven't been able to recover, probably as well as what they would have normally, because of the COVID and the distancing and the isolations and things like that. So there is another layer to that. So we'll be, obviously focusing on that going forward. So, any questions?
Sorry about that. I was on mute there for a moment. My apologies. We're all learning together, right? So
yes, exactly.
A couple of questions did come in, Kathy, and that is, I really love what you're doing. That's Super exciting. So from Christy Jagger and forgive me if I say it wrong, I realize I'm the only American maybe in the room. Where did you where did you place large format advertising to reach your target audience is one of her questions.
Sure. With the large format, in regards to billboards, we actually had one at the bottom of the Southeastern Freeway for people travelling up into the hills, saying that, you know, you are now entering bushfire area. With ad shells, we had them on bus stops in the bushfire zone areas, because it's actually really good. We were actually really able to hone in on postcodes in those bushfire prone areas, so we could you know, spend the dollars where it needs to you know, be, so without much waste. Also Port Lincoln, we had digital billboards out there as well.
Wonderful. And I'm just scrolling through the screen. So we have a question from Barbara Ryan, and she states that, oh, there it goes. I'd be keen to hear how the fire go away theme was developed.
Well, from a fantastic advertising agency, very creative, but it was also about the brief. And the Nation is the creative agency that we use, and they had developed 3 different concepts for us. Two of them were aimed more at that fear and really sort of in your face what can happen, whereas we wanted something a little bit more not softer, but something not so much in your face, but to really make you think. And obviously, you know, children are a key, you know, part of families, and, you know, we don't want to lose them, you know. And one of the commercials, and I'm really sorry that that wasn't working, but I think they're up on the EMPA website anyway. If not, I can pop them up there. But it was more about also reaching the younger audiences, because we also had animals feature in some of the key messaging. So, you know, some people don't have children, might not resonate as much with that, but like I said, fur kids, you know, a lot of people can resonate with that.
Exactly. Wonderful. And Holly Langler asks or states she's interested to know more about how you've had to reframe your messages for this year as a result of the last season's bushfire impacts and the COVID-19 situation. So she wanted more info on that if possible.
Yeah, like I said, we're starting on that as we speak, and we've just had some drafts of concepts as we go ahead. So this year we have had to change it, and we won't be using the fire go away. So it's more about community, and so we're looking at real life stories. So like video testimonials of people who have actually been in a fire, and we'll have where people are interviewing someone who hasn't experienced a bushfire. So it's about bringing the community in and making the community work together, and so they don't feel alone, and actually everyone's there to help each other. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this is going to pan out, but our key messaging will still stay the same about being prepared, the 5-minute bushfire plans, and staying informed, but it will be taken into account people still traumatised, taken into account the COVID-19 as well.
Wonderful. That's quite a mountain to climb.
It is.
One more question. Yeah, hats off to you. That's fantastic. So another question from Barbara Ryan. She types, what type of research did you use for the base?
Sure. In any marketing campaign, research is key. So, you know, obviously each year we look at the research, you know, pre-campaign and post-campaign, but then also, you know, it's about researching how people want to also receive the messages, their key messages, and also what they want to know, you know, and which came through clearly with a lot of the research. The focus groups at the beginning, and which I've just booked, and they'll be happening in a couple of weeks, where audiences from bushfire prone areas will come in and they'll have a look at the concepts. And when we did this last year's campaign, like, yeah, everyone felt that the Firefighter Go Away was very, very powerful message. So yeah, the research, and then also research about recovery, you know, and like I said before, we hadn't had a bushfire for a few years, sorry. And then this year we had, you know, like I said, the horror season. So it's been very, very front of mind. And obviously talking with community groups and having community meetings as well, you know, during and post bushfire.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. And we have another question that's come up. So Caroline Alcorso asks, could you please expand on the distressing aspects of the campaign and that this will not be used this year? Also, how will you address the COVID overlay?
Yeah, as mentioned, we won't be using the Firefighter Go Away this campaign. And as mentioned previously, COVID-19 is definitely going to be a big part of it. For instance, when there's when you have to find a safe place like community halls, we have to now take into account about the social distancing. Our firefighters, they are always well equipped, but then obviously if they're fighting bushfires, you know, there is a risk of COVID there, but obviously protecting people's properties. But yeah, we know that it will traumatise people if we do play it. We pulled it straight away, even off the TV as well, but because we had those other Be Prepared and Stay Informed, we could just keep the campaign rolling.
So a bit of don't put all your eggs in one basket, maybe? Is that how?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Multiple fronts, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. So Holly Langler asks, when does the bushfire season in South Australia usually start? And far in advance of the season, do you start your campaign activities?
Okay, so generally it starts in November.
Okay.
Last year started in October, just due to, you know, the fuel loads out there. What we do, we get obviously the reports and, you know, fuel loads, predicted weather. You know, that's an important part of that side of things. Sorry, what was the other part of the question?
And then let's see, when does the bushfire season start, which you addressed, and
Yeah.
basically like how far in advance of the season do you begin your activities, your campaign?
Sure. Well, we continue all year round.
I was going to say, do you ever stop? I don't think so. It doesn't
Yeah,
sound like it.
exactly. Because, you know, obviously during winter we have a lot of home fires. So then we go into that messaging in regards to keeping safe. But also we have those preparedness ones. But what's the word I'm trying to think of? Sorry, it's just gone. It's just left me right now.
That's okay.
But yeah, so we do, well, again, COVID is actually going to limit some of our community activities, but all year round, you know, our brigades will have open days, we have community meetings, we have a great initiative called Fiery Women. So it's a group of women who live in rural South Australia, and they learn the tools as well to, you know, how to help when there's fire. So there's all those ongoing activities, but for the planning of this campaign, it really starts July, and then it'll be ready to go by the 25th of October this year. So there's not a lot of time in that perspective, but, you know, we're always planning for it and always thinking, you know, what we can do. But from a procurement process and state government process, we can't really start doing too much until we get those approvals.
It's always about budget. It's in there somewhere, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
So. And
then we're just wondering here too, as you moved through this campaign and you develop your forward picture, what do you feel are the key learnings from this most recent campaign, and how do you think they apply to your future campaigns?
Sure. Yeah, look, going forward, you know, it's important to leverage and increase engagement that drives greater adoption of our bushfire plans. A lot of people, when they were surveyed, said that they had a plan in their head. But as we know, when panic sets in, that all goes out the window. So, you know, going forward for this year, we will be honing in more in regards to using our CFS bushfire plan, because some are very, very long-winded and people don't want to do it. You know, we just want something that's quick and easy that people can actually, you know, use. Also, we didn't have in the budget last year because we had to do some creative budgeting, I call it. So we
Yeah.
yeah, we normally have a main TV ad backup. So with the fire go away, generally we would have had another replacement one for that particular messaging about being prepared. But that, you know, we couldn't do that this year. So we're making sure in the budget that we do have, in case we have, touch wood, or so we don't have a you know, bushfire season as well. But yeah, and we'll still be using the Be Prepared and Stay Informed, because they're key messaging and they're key actions that we want the audience to do. So, and then also, you know, we'll be doing, like going forward for this year, for the fire danger season, we'll be doing a lot more testimonials with real people, you know, that have experienced it, or people have just moved into a bushfire prone zone, so they, you know, can relate to the people. So there'll be, you know, the different target audiences, you know, from the 18 to 39-year-old, and then from 40 plus. So, and it'll be from different perspectives. And again, it's so other people can actually relate.
Wow, that sounds wonderful. And then we have another note from Connor Smith, and he says, it looks like some great fire plan results, with also some people only partially completing their plan. How are you reviewing and improving that experience? And also, we are looking at a similar situation in WA, so interested in your thoughts. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll just write that. Unfortunately, with our website, because obviously, you know, you have the infrastructure, we can't get back into the system to send emails out to, or currently, to finish their plans. So we're currently working on our website to see if that can happen. Now, those stats in particular were from the media agency, whereas our metrics from our website reporting doesn't give us that. So yeah, it's about matching up those systems to make sure that, yeah, we can track it.
Okay. And then we have another question from Barbara Ryan. She asks, how do your volunteers work with this campaign?
They actually, for any marketing campaign, you need to bring in obviously key stakeholders, and the CFS volunteers definitely are. And we actually involved them in, so we had to create a fire. So we involved them, you know, a couple of the brigades in that planning, and obviously they did the controlled burn for us. But then also I present the presentation to all the staff, and the feedback from the CFS volunteers was that they were really, really happy with it. And actually just thinking in regards to that fire go away, where they're running around the house, you know, trying to get their stuff together. They also thought that was important, because a lot of people are doing that at the last minute. And in fact, I had a call a week after the campaign started. It was a lady who had experienced the Ash Wednesday bushfires, and she was actually the first thing she said to me was, "I hate that ad." And I said, "Oh, you know, can you tell me why? What in particular don't you like about it?" And she said, "Oh, you know, I was in the fire," and she said, "and that commercial," she said, "we absolutely did everything in that commercial, and I was just remembering seeing my sister, you know, doing what that little boy was, putting things in the backpack." And I had actually said to her, I said, "Well, that's a good thing, because that means that commercial is hitting the mark in regards to running around at the last minute, and then, you know, then it zones in on when they're caught in a fire envelope." So yeah, it worked really well, and the CFS volunteers especially were really on board with it.
Wow, that's impressive, and I can't say enough for volunteer management and support.
Oh,
It's just people willing to give is amazing to me. So
yeah.
those are all the questions that we were sent through. Do you have any other comments that you want to share with folks, or any other thoughts? Just
Um, no, I just want to say, you know, thank you for taking the time to listen, and, you know, recognising the campaign. And, you know, I'm happy to be contacted at any time, particularly with WA. They can, you know, get the details from Bianca if they want. But yeah, the key thing, obviously, with all campaigns is just, you know, making sure that you're hitting the target audiences, you do your research, and you can adjust your campaign at any stage through it, especially when there's fatalities.
That's always hard. Yeah. And hopefully
Mm.
we avoid that in the future. And with people like you helping lead the way and get that communication piece really solidified. Um, awesome. And thank you for all that you do. It's phenomenal. So with
Thank
that,
you.
I reckon you come over anytime. With that, we'll wrap this session, I reckon. And so thanks again, Kathy Baklan. I hope everyone here has enjoyed today's EMPA webinar. Our next is on Thursday, October 1st, and features Professor Jim McLennan, who looks at how stress affects decision making and what this means to emergency communicators. I hope you'll join us then. There's a short survey when you leave the webinar. Please participate. We value your feedback. That's how we improve. And thank you for joining us. I'm Lorraine Churchill, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. See you, everyone.
Cheers.